You're listening to the Kim D. Snyder Show, episode number 17. In this episode, you will discover what forgetting someone's name signals.
Welcome to the Kim D. Snyder Podcast.
Welcome. I'm your host, Kim. This is a show for business leaders and experts to stand out. For the show notes, please go to kimdsnyder.com/017. If you're interested in having me work with leaders in your organization, go to kimdsnyder.com/inquire. Let's get this party started. And this party started about 11 years ago. I was at a business networking event. I had run into a couple that I had met previously, and I was asking about an update and how they were doing, and I used their names. And after I was starting the conversation, I was looking for input from them, and they had a stared glance at me because it was apparent that they did not remember as much about me and nor my name. They never addressed me. They looked at me and they said, "I'm sorry, I forgot your name." And that was the most horrible feeling I had, to be insignificant. And I realized at that time I didn't want somebody else to feel that way. And so I made it my mission to remember people's names the best I could, or at least something about them, so that I would not make them feel that way. And that is the reason for this episode, because I have been with people that say I'm horrible at remembering names. I can't remember names. And I'm going to tell you, you can. You just have to make it a priority. So if you haven't ever felt that, you don't want to feel that. If you have not ever remembered somebody's name, that also feels bad too, because for me, I know when I've done it, I felt that I should have taken the time to spend a little bit of time to get to know them. And so however you need to do that for you, you need to figure out how and why it's important for you to talk to those people so you remember their names. Don't worry that we can't remember too many names. I think the study out is we can remember about 150 names, and that's plenty. That's more than people that we deal with on a regular basis. So we don't have to worry about too many names to remember, but here's a couple of the techniques that I did for myself that helped me. So one, I definitely decided that I need to do it because I didn't want to make somebody feel like that. And for me, I am visual, but I also had to use the repetitive approach. And so when somebody would come tell me my name or come introduce themselves, I would say, I would use their name multiple times, like 3 to 5 times in sentences back to back. And I would kind of commit it to memory, make sure I was present, and make sure that I was really connecting with them. And so what that would look like was, hi, Hannah, nice to meet you. Oh, great. You know what, Hannah, tell me about your business. Hannah, if you were to, and then, Hannah, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Hannah, have you met so-and-so? I would literally do it that way. I would use Hannah, or whatever their name was, back to back. I would spend 60 to 90 seconds, you could get to know about them, and I would understand enough about them that it went that way. And then I've honestly also typed it in my phone as a note, just to open up a text and put it in there. I've also written it down in my notebook. And so there's multiple techniques, but for me, probably the most easiest and most used one for me is probably saying it, 3 to 5 times right away and really understanding. And then again, if I see them a few minutes later, I say it again. I make it a point to say that so that it just keeps cementing in my brain. And that's probably the biggest technique for me. The other techniques I've used, and this one I probably is my second biggest technique, is if I'm at an event and I forget the person's name and I have somebody that I know, and even if it's not somebody I know, I grab them and say, "Hey, I'd like to introduce you to somebody, but I also have forgotten their name. So I'm going to walk up and just say, 'Hey, I'd like to introduce you to Steve. And if you could, say your name and introduce yourself, I'll get to know their name too, and you'll help me out.'" And so I've enlisted other people, and that technique works out really well. I've also done it where if I remember their name might be sort of unique in spelling, or if it's a name that they might have a different spelling for it, then I'll say, "Hey, could you remind me how you spell your name?" Now, obviously, if it's somebody like Mark, well, Mark could have a R or a C or K at the end, or Steve could be a V or a PH. But I do say that, remind me how to spell your name, remind me how to pronounce your name. And I've used those techniques as well to get around it. So I'm not just saying, "I forgot your name" every time. And so, or I might also say, "Remember how we met," or "Please explain to me where we met because you look really familiar." And they'll start telling me the story. And I will generally remember something about that story or where we met or that event. Oftentimes I've met people many years later and I will remember, like, their face, I'll see them. I don't know if I'll always remember their name, but I will often remember something about that story or however we connected. And so that's how my brain works. But, figure out how your brain works so that you can make that connection with people, because the relationships are really important in our lives and we want to make sure that we take that time. And we're only talking a few minutes out of the day to take that time to get to know somebody, to make them feel important, make them feel important to themselves and to you. Now, the last thing I've done is after I was, doing that technique of, okay, I'm going to remember names. I don't want to make somebody feel like that. Of course, I went to the extreme and I said, okay, every class that I'm going to teach, every meeting I'm going to give, every social interaction, I'm going to meet everybody I can in that room. And so I remember a specific incident when I was in Switzerland, doing some training for a class, and there was just under 30 people in there, and some of the names were foreign to me and not easy to pronounce. And I just said, look, I am going to remember your names all by lunchtime today. And I said that at the beginning and they were all crazy. And so I did that technique where I went around the room. Every time they said something, I said, you're right, George, or you're right, Selkie, or you're right. I would use their name or address their name, or, okay, so George, thanks for raising your hand. What do you have to say, George? And then Selkie, can you tell me, you two get together and tell me what you and Anita are talking about, and then come back. I would use their names constantly in a room, and I would use that challenge for myself. And it was also endearing for my students, because they would come up to me at the break and say, oh my gosh, that's really impressive, and thank you, and how did you do that? And I forget names as well. And so it was a really good icebreaker as well at the break. So I would encourage you to use that technique, but you don't have to go crazy, but do it a couple times. It's a great challenge for yourself, and it will really make you remember names. The action items I have for this episode are, one is make sure you decide if you want to make this part of your life. And if you do, the first thing you have to do is stop saying you can't remember people's names, because when you say that, you're putting that energy out there and you're declaring it. So just stop saying it. So once you've decided you're going to do it, remove the I don't remember people's names and start saying I remember people's names and I'm awesome at it. Number two is when you're starting this process, be honest and share that with somebody, because you'll be surprised again how much it will endear them to you. So similar to the example I shared with teaching the class in Switzerland, you can do it at a Christmas party or a holiday party, or, a kids event where there's multiple people, or a work event. And as they start to introduce your name and say, hey, Mark, great, Mark. Hey, Mark, I am trying to remember people's names, so I might have to ask you a couple times until I get it. I hope you don't mind. And usually they'll say, you know what? No worries, or here's my card to help, or I have that problem too. And it's a great icebreaker. So just be honest and open and share it, and it'll start to get easier and it will make you start to remember. And then the third time is, figure out one of these techniques that work. So I shared, a few techniques of mine that work. There's other techniques and there's apps, and I'll show some of those links in the show notes. Speaking of show notes, to get the show notes for this episode, please go to kimdysnider.com/017. Thank you for listening to the show. If you like this show, please leave a review wherever you're listening or watching to help the information get out to others. What do you want more results for you and your leadership team? If so, let's talk. Go to kimdysnider.com/inquire. See you on the next episode.